Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tronage, and today we're going to be talking about the HGLRC XJB 145, and specifically what tune am I using with this and how you can get your hands on my tune. I'm going to tell you. Stick around. All right, so let's get a little something out of the way first of all. I'm not going to teach you how to tune. That's not what this video is going to be about, because I personally don't feel like I'm at a place yet where I can teach it, because I don't quite have a handle on it myself. I just know what feels good, and I managed to get the quad into a place where I'm like, this is awesome. I don't want to touch anything and screw anything more up. So this is not about how to tune a quad. This is that if you have this particular quad and you want to take my tune and run it on it because your tune is not good, then this is the video for you. Now, a couple caveats when doing this. Now, you should all be using an HGLRC XJB 145. That's the quad I'm using, and if you're here, it's probably because you searched for that, and you probably have this same quad, and you're like, I want a really good tune. Well, here it comes at you. But you need to have not only this quad, but there's a couple other things. Number one, your props. You have to be running the same props as me, because seriously, a tune can get knocked out of whack just because of the air temperature or the humidity. But we're not going to get that picky and that anal when it comes to the quality of the tune. So I'm just going to broad spectrum it and say, it doesn't really matter that stuff. You know, if you want to fine tune it yourself, great. If you want to use this as like a baseline to then start, tweaking it yourself, awesome. But you're going to need to be running the same props, because if you're running a different set of props, it's not going to work as well. Now, links are all in the description below, but the props that I use, they're these, the Gemfans. They're their 3052s. They're the 3-inch props with their 5.2 pitch, whatever, factor thing. And that's what I run. Now, when you do this, put on fresh props. Even when you're tuning and stuff, you don't want to start using a new tune with old props, because unless they look immaculate and you've never crashed them. But chances are, if you're like me, we're normal people, flying our quad, crashing into everything and beating our props up. And they get bent out of whack, and we do that little bend it back trick, or it's got chips, it's good enough. Yeah, well, the problem is that throws off your tune. So if you tune a quad, fresh props on there. You can always take them off and throw your beat up ones back on later on. But when you're doing tuning, or you're testing a tuning, or you're seeing if a tune works for you, please use fresh props. So you need to use the Gemfan 3052s. That's number one. Number two, type of battery. Now I'll tell you what I'm using. I'm using this. It's the Tattu brand. Now it doesn't have to be Tattu brand. It's just I happen to really be fond of Tattu. So I only run Tattu packs exclusively, but you can run whatever you'd like. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And what this is a 4S pack. It's 850 mAh, and it's a 75C rating. Okay, as long as your battery pack is somewhere around those same specs, it should be about the same size, it should be about the same weight, and off we go. If you're running 3S, sorry, this won't work for you. You need to have a 4S pack for this tune to be good. Now, this tune will work on 3S packs. I've flown it with my 1300 mAh 40C 3S packs, and it does fly pretty damn good. But it's not great. It's great with this, because this is what the tune is really meant for. So you can follow along if you're using 3S, but 4S is where this tune is really designed for. Those are really the two big factors. You want to make sure that you're on a 4S, that you have a similar weighted pack, because again, weight can throw off a tune. So since the quad's probably about the same weight for everybody, the battery, if you have a battery that weighs similar to this, then you're pretty close in. And as long as you have these props that you're using, then we're all on the same page. The only other difference that I'm running right now is that I have on a fancy new antenna. Now, we've already covered the whole antenna mount and being able to have like a standard SMA connector just so you can swap out antennas. But if you notice now, I'm running a Pagoda. Not just any Pagoda, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it's a Tronage pagoda. Coming soon. Stay tuned. Anyway, now that we've talked about the stuff about the quad itself, now let's get into the nitty-gritty and talk about the tune itself. So, first thing we gotta do, we gotta plug into Betaflight, so here we go. Plugging in. And now we're plugged into Betaflight. Now, one thing I want to point out now is you see here, I have what I said before was like the no gyro problem in a previous video. And this is intentional now. I've actually turned off my gyro. I don't use it anymore. The no gyro problem really doesn't affect me, but I want to let you guys know a little update on that. With this tune, I'm relying heavily on the dynamic filter and I'm relying heavily on the PID loop to do all the corrections. The less stuff I have the CPU doing, the more cycles I free up for handling that stuff. And here's what I'm going to show you before we get into the tune itself. See down here on CPU load, it's showing it at 5% just sitting here on the table. Now, my gyro is not turned on. You see I'm moving my quad. Nothing's changing on the screen because I have it turned off. But it's not broken. I've just turned it off. And if yours is broken, by the way, if yours is broken and you don't have a way to fix it, and you don't use angle or horizon modes while flying, which are perfectly fine to be using if that's how you want to fly. That's totally cool. But the gyro is required for those modes. So you can't turn it off and expect to fly in those modes. But if you only use acro mode, you can turn off your gyro. And I'll show you what happens. So under the configuration tab, over here we have accelerometer. Okay, I'll turn it on. Now remember, we're at 5% with it off. Save and reboot. Go back in. Back to the configuration tab. Now look, CPU load 7%. So just sitting here on the table, turning on the accelerometer added 2% to my CPU load, which is 2% that I wouldn't have if I turn it off. So why would I want to, if I'm not using that mode, I don't need it on. And I'm just wasting CPU. It frees up more space. So I advise, if you're going to follow this tune and you do not use angle mode and you do not use horizon mode, just go over here to accelerometer and turn it off. And then hit save and reboot. And then you can see we're back to our 5% and our accelerometer is turned off. So that's a quick way to fix the no gyro without having to use a hot gun and flux and all that. If you do use angle horizon mode, unfortunately, this won't fix that problem. This just gets rid of the errors because now it's just telling it, ignore that there's no gyro, but we know there's no gyro. That's a little quick tip and an aside. Anyway, back to the tune. So now for this tune, there's a couple of things we're going to be relying on to help us out. And they're under the configuration tab, but we're going to scroll all the way down. And they're these two down here, the anti-gravity and the dynamic filter. Anti-gravity is going to help us out because if we're doing some good throttle punches, I've noticed when I was flying and I originally got it and I punch it, it kind of would pitch a little bit and yaw a little bit. It would do some stuff every time you punched it. It wouldn't just go. It would kind of, do like... What anti-gravity does is when you slam that throttle, it ups your I values by a factor because it's saying, well, you're going to do this big push. Let's up those I values temporarily until you bring the throttle back down. If you set those I values high without using anti-gravity, it'll still fix the problem, but now you're using those high values all the time, not just when you're doing those really hard punches. So turning anti-gravity on does like a correction for only when you're doing throttle punches. And if you're doing, freestyle, you're doing some punch outs and stuff, it works out well. So I would turn that on. The dynamic filter, we're going to talk about filtering in a minute, but essentially there can be static filters and dynamic filters. A static filter just says here and here, silence that. Let's just, to make things easy. Imagine there's like a waveform and you're saying between here and here, that's blocked. We're filtering that part out. Okay. Dynamic filter is sort of like, well, it could be here, but now it looks like it's here, and now we'll move it over to here, and now we're saying it's over here. So the dynamic filters can move around. That's what makes them very powerful, because it's letting the CPU figure out where should we quiet the noise, essentially, versus just saying, well, here's where the noise usually is, so we'll just block that part. Because you're also cutting into a little bit of your performance by doing that statically versus dynamically. So you want to make sure these two things are on. Now we're going to get into the PID tuning. And here we go. There it is. Oh, there is my setup. I'm very pleased with this tune. I don't see myself changing it anytime soon. I think this is the best tune when you're running these props and this battery on this quad. Copy it down as you wish, but I'm going to show you later how to, use a little CLI commands. I'm going to give you a little bonus lesson working with the CLI, but you can hit the pause, punch in these values. Now, while we're on this screen, I do want to point out that you have these things up here. They're called your profile and your rate profile. And essentially what these are is this quad can store 3 different sets of PIDs and 3 different sets of rates. So your PIDs are basically these, the P, the I, and the D. And your rates are this stuff over here. That's your rates. And it stores them separately. You have your PID profiles and your rate profiles, and you can have 3 of each. So 3 PIDs, 3 rates. So you can set, like right now I have these PIDs set on profile 3. But you see there's 2 other things. So you can say, okay, well, this is going to be, profile 3 is going to be my freestyle setup, and number 2 is going to be my race setup, and number 1 is going to be like my experimental one that I'm trying to play with. But the good news about this is you can put these in and then make copies of them to the other profile spots, and then you can tweak with it. And if you don't like what you did and you accidentally saved it, you're not out for the day. You can just go back to profile 3, and then you're flying back to your fresh copy. This also comes into play when we're talking later about the CLI, and I'm showing you how to just inject this stuff without having to manually go into this and type these numbers all in. It will inject these into whatever your current active rate and PID profile that's active. So like right now, my active profile is 3 and my active rate profile is 1. If I go to inject any kind of settings into this, it's going to put them under those headings. So just bear in mind later on when I show you how to inject this using the CLI, it's going to put it into whatever the ones are set up as up here. So if you don't want to overwrite what you already have, come over here to this PID tuning tab and just change these to something else and then do your injection. But we'll cover that in a little bit. Now, back to the PID profile. All these are the settings you're going to need to punch in. Now, the thing that a lot of people miss is this whole filter settings. They don't realize that this is a thing you can click, but you can click it and boom, we're in the filter settings now. And this is where I've turned off all my filters. Now, warning, disclaimer, blinking red words on your screen. You disable these at your own risk, because turning off these static filters can cause your motors to burn out. You're basically turning off filters that prevent noise from going through the system, and the noise is what can actually overheat and smoke these motors. You do this at your own risk, so don't blame me if something happens and you follow through with this, but I'm going to show you the correct way to do this. When you first come to this screen, it's going to look like this. You're going to have biquad, and these 3 are going to be turned on. That's what you're going to see as a default when you first come to this screen. The correct way to do this is pop in my tune, leave everything on this screen alone, and go fly it. See how it feels, get a feel for it, bring it down, and then check your motor temperatures. Just feel them with your hands. They should feel okay. Then you're going to come in here, go back into Betaflight, and change your biquad to be PT1. You're going to click save, and then you're going to go fly it again. Now, what I recommend, to be overly cautious, because I don't want to break things, and I don't want you to break things, fly it for 30 seconds. Just give it a couple quick maneuvers, fly for like 30 seconds, and then land it and check your temperatures. You're not going to really do too much damage in about 30 seconds worth of flight, but it'll be a good indication of where your motors are going. If things feel pretty comfortable, fly it for the rest of the pack, fly it like you stole it, do your maneuvers, do whatever, come back and check your motor temps, see how they feel. If all feels good, You're going to turn this one off. You're going to click save. Same process. 30-second test, check your temps. Fly the rest of the pack, check your temps. If all is good, you turn the next one off. Hit save. You're good. 30-second test, check your temps. Fly the rest of the pack, check your temps. I bet you can see where this is going. If all is good, turn off the next one. And what do? Yep. We hit save. We fly for, that's right, 30 seconds. And then we fly for, that's right, the rest of the pack, as long as we've checked our temps. Now, I keep talking about checking temps, but I haven't really said, we're not taking the temperature. We don't have a thermometer. But this is how you know if your motors are hot. You touch them, okay? If they feel cool to the touch, awesome. They may feel warm, like not room temperature, but a little warm. Okay, that's cool too. If you touch them and you start going, ooh, that's hot, you're on the cusp of where you maybe want to turn on a filter, back one step. But if you go, ooh, that's hot, that's a red flag right there. That's where you've gone too hot. So as long as you can touch it and go, yeah, that feels kind of hot, but you know, I don't know, I'm not really sure, but it seems pretty, if you're holding it comfortably, no matter how hot it is, it's probably okay. But if you're like, ooh, I don't really feel comfortable holding this, but I can, but I don't feel comfortable, that's probably the brink. And if you have to pull away from it, then yeah, you've gone over the brink. So what do you do if you hit that point? Well, you reverse the process. So I was fine, but all of a sudden I turned this last filter off and now, oh my God, they're so hot. Well, you can turn that one back on. Hit save, fly it, and see if now, okay, everything's kind of cool and happy. That's where I ended up. For me personally, I was able to turn everything off. And since you have the same quad and you're going to be running the same props and you're going to have a very similar or the same battery, there's probably no reason you can just go to turning them all off. But again, I would like you to be safe and not break your quad because of my advice. So do it the correct way and make sure what I have works for you, because just because this works for me does not mean it's going to be good for you, because due to manufacturing differences and tolerances and how many times you've crashed and how many times I've crashed and who knows what, there could be many factors involved, but do it the right way. Okay. And that's the tune. So if all you care about is the tune and you want to punch it in all manually and through Betaflight and you're just going to pause this screen and move on with life, you can stop watching here. Now, I'm also, if you're interested in how to play a little bit with the CLI and how to take some settings that you have and save them and to be able to inject them later on, well, this also comes in handy for like OSDs. Like I have my OSD set up the same for every single quad because I can just take the slice of the OSD section of the CLI, save that to a file, and every time I set up a new quad, I can just grab that same OSD section and inject it, and then every quad will have the same OSD settings without me having to do anything. So if you're interested about that, keep watching. So let's go. So for the CLI, we're going to go over here to the CLI tab. And the command we're going to use for this is a little different. When I did my big Betaflight video, we talked about dump, D-U-M-P, and that spits out all the settings. What we're going to do here is we really are more concerned about what is different from stock for this flight board, because we're talking all the same quad, so they all come with the same stock settings, and we just care about what I've done differently on my quad versus the way it comes stock. So by typing in the word diff, D-I-F-F, and you hit enter, it spits out all the settings that are different from the way it comes stock, which is a much shorter list than the dump command. As you can see, this is a much shorter list of all my changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to just come over here and click save to file, and I have one sitting here right now, so I'll just click that and we'll overwrite it. So let's save and replace. And now I've just saved all my differences that I've put into Betaflight from the stock changes to a file. Now let's go back and open that in Notepad. So now I've opened it in Notepad, and I have all of them here where we can make some changes. And what changes we want to make is I want to edit out all the stuff that's not revolving around the tune. So this way I have just tuning stuff as a little snippet that I can inject into the CLI. So because this was a difference, for example, like name. Name is the HGLRC XJB. Well, because the stock name is blank. So because I put it in a name, now it's part of the difference between what I've changed and the stock values. So I'm going to take away everything here except for the anti-gravity and the dynamic filter, because we want to make sure that those two are on. So those are the first two components of this file that we're going to leave as far as the tune goes. Then we're going to take out this stuff because we don't care about any of that. That has nothing to do with tuning, so we'll get rid of that. And then up to this point here where it says the gyro notch 1 hertz and stuff, this is these two are two of those filters of the 3 with the little tick boxes. So there's 2 of them. The rest of this from below those 2, we'll start erasing this stuff. By the way, here's OSD stuff. So if you wanted to like make a file for just your OSD, take away everything except the parts that say set OSD. Just save the set OSD parts. Make that a file, and then you'll have just your OSD settings. So you can just set up a quad, copy and paste those into the CLI, which I'll show you in a moment, and boom, your OSD will be set up. You don't have to go through and manually tick on and off the different buttons and move things around on the screen. It'll just be the way you want it to be. So as I said, we'll take out this stuff below those 2 filters, go all the way down to here. We'll take that away. And this is what we changed from biquad to PT1. This is that 3rd notch filter. And then here's turning the anti-gravity setting to 3.5, but in numerical terms, it's showing it as 3,500. The D term set point is something I played with a little bit, and it's now 1.0 or 100 numerically. And then here's the different PIDs that I've punched in, that I've changed from their stock values, which are here. And the rate profile, there's no change, so we can just get rid of that stuff too. And there you go. So if you want meat and potatoes of what my tune is from stock, that's it. These numbers that are highlighted now is what will change a stock set HGLRC XJB 145 to be exactly what I'm running right now. Again, word of warning, if you inject this the way I'm about to show you, it will turn off all your filters all at the same time and off you go. So please, if you don't feel comfortable with all your filters being off right off the get-go, go through and do those manually. Don't just inject this. Do it the manual way. If you do inject this, I would say highly recommend flying it for like 30 seconds, just being sure you too can fly with no filters on, and then, take it from there. So let's pretend now I just opened up this file, and here's my tune that I want to inject. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to pick and copy it. Now it's copied to my clipboard. This information is also going to be in the description below. So if you just want to copy and paste it, go down to the description. You'll see this exact stuff down there, and you can copy and paste that snippet and do exactly the same thing and inject it into the CLI. So we've copied it, and now we go over here to the CLI. Okay, so let's start over here. Let's disconnect. Okay, so you'd connect to your quad, you'd go down to the CLI, you'd click here, and then you're going to hit paste. Now, at first glance, you're like, it only put 1 line. No, it actually pasted the whole thing you just typed or copied or whatever, but it's only showing the last line. So you have to push enter. You push enter, and you see it, and it goes and does those things that we've programmed it to do with those settings. So it's set all these things. Now, obviously, mine was already set that way, but you get the point. Now, you still have to save. If you don't save this, it's not going to save this information to the quad. So you type S-A-V-E, save, and you hit enter. It then saves it to the quad, reboots it, and off we go. And for it, I'll prove how this works. I'll go into my configuration tab just to show you it in action. Go into my configuration tab, and I'm going to turn off the dynamic filter and the anti-gravity, just for argument's sake. Save and reboot, connect. And now you can see under my configurations, okay, they are turned off. Go into my CLI, inject my thing by pasting. I hit enter. It does its thing, and I hit save. It reboots. And now if I go into configuration, they're now turned on. So all I'm doing is I'm giving you the easy way to set all the settings without having to pause the video or write it down or type them in manually. You can just copy and paste that little snippet into your CLI, hit enter, hit save, type save, and you'll have my tune. So I hope I was able to help you out there. You have my tune now. You have exactly what I'm using, and I'm loving it, and I hope it works out good for you too. We're using the same hardware, we're using the same thing. If you pop on those same kind of props and you have a very similar or the same battery, you should have a very similar experience to what I am, and I love the feel of this tune, and I'm not looking to change it or tweak it at all. So I hope I was able to help you out, and I hope you guys have a similar experience. If you found some value in this video and you've tried out the tune and you're like, wow, this was really cool, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It'd really help me out. And let me know in the comments. Let me know how it worked out for you. Let me know if you liked it. If you didn't like it, let me know that in the comments. I mean, I love it, but I like chocolate ice cream. Other people like vanilla ice cream. Everyone has their own tastes. Tunes are no different. Just because I love this tune doesn't mean you'll love this tune. And always leave me questions. If you have a question about something, feel free to put that in the comments below also. I pride myself pretty strongly in having a open conversation with you guys, the viewers, and responding to a lot of, pretty much every question. If I have an answer, I'm going to answer. If you look at any video and all the comments, you're going to see there's like replies on all of them from me, because I want to make sure I don't lose touch with you guys, the viewers, because that's what's important, is to make sure I help you guys out. That's the point of this. That's why I want to get everyone in the air, grow the sport, and have a good time. So as always, my name is Tronage. Fly strong. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you really should subscribe. I'm always posting new content. If you'd like to help support the channel and get access to giveaways, raffles, and other exclusive benefits, consider joining the Tronage family on the Patreon page. Here's some videos that you might be interested in. This is the latest one that I posted, and this one I think you might just like. Go check them out.